I've got a pretty interesting defamation question for you today. Hi, I'm attorney Gordon Firemark, and this is Asked and Answered, where I answer your entertainment law questions to help you take your career and business to the next level. So a viewer wrote in with this question. I've written a spec pilot set in a real and widely known American city in the 1950s. At one point, an official of a real institution, which really can't be fictionalized since there's only one institution of that kind in every city, accepts a bribe. I wonder whether that might cause problems. Well, this is a great question. Unfortunately, it's hard to give an opinion on these kinds of things without reviewing the actual piece in question. But in principle, this could be a real issue. You see, this is a question mainly about the law of defamation. That's libel if it's in print or electronic form, and slander if it's just a spoken conversation to a small audience. Now, the elements for a case of defamation vary a little from state to state, but fundamentally they are these. A false statement, so truth is always a defense, made about the plaintiff, the person in question, that is published and causes the plaintiff injury to reputation and standing in the community. And when the plaintiff is a public figure, then there's an additional requirement that the material was published with actual malice. Essentially, that means that the defendant knew it was false or was reckless about whether it was false or true. Okay, so this question mainly turns on that second element, about the plaintiff. You see, if the character in your pilot and the real office holder can't be separated and distinguished from one another, then the statements would seem to be about that person. And if they're false and damaging, they would amount to libel. But if the character and the real person are radically different from each other in other ways, so that the average person that receives the message doesn't automatically conclude, oh, they're talking about so-and-so, well, then you might be okay. For example, if your story is set in Los Angeles in 1955 and the story includes a corrupt police chief, it would probably be wise to make the story's police chief as different as possible from the real one at that time, William Parker, so the audience doesn't think you're attributing the wrongdoing to him. Also, if the person in question is deceased, his or her rights to sue for defamation and invasion of privacy and things like that probably died with him or her. Now again, this is something that can vary a little bit from state to state, but this many years later, chances are there isn't a right to sue for anybody involved. So the bottom line, this calls for a true legal analysis that's performed by a lawyer you've hired to give a formal opinion. Now, you could leave that up to the producer or the network that eventually buys and decides to produce this thing, but you may find that it's an easier pitch if you can give them some assurances about this kind of thing. So that does it for this session of Asked and Answered. If you have a question for me, just visit firemark.com/questions and let me know. I'll see you next time.